Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm Ianthe, the founder of the Onyx Archive, which is a creative institution built on bold perspectives, and the goal is to inspire change and encourage self actualization.
And I am Alexandria, visiting from my channel Alex the Artisan, a channel with the goal of challenging ideas and expanding your perspectives because knowledge is power.
Boom. Okay, and today we have come together
To shatter the illusions you've been sold.
to make you question the narratives that you've been told.
And to fuck shit up.
Bow, bow, bow. That's it. Period.
Yes.
So, welcome to another installment of our Americanization series. And we're here to explore America's influence on our everyday realities. I kind of added a little bit more to that section. So, today's discussion is all about marriage. Sure you guys noticed the
Ooh.
envelope and the invitation and the display of the thumbnail. You definitely saw what it was about. Okay, so we're putting rings on things, or are we? Hmm.
Where are we?
Or are we?
I don't. Just
I
saying.
don't either. It's free. I actually, what's so funny about
Mm.
today's discussion? My coworkers, we were talking about the rings came up today randomly in the discussion.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. So it was,
Okay.
I guess it was in the atmosphere for this conversation. And and it made me realize that if I did think about having a wedding ring, I would want it to be emerald gold and emerald wrapped in gold. So I was having a little fun in my mind.
I love that. I did have a ring for a while, but it was broken. But I was the same similar vibes to you. I did not go for a diamond as the center. I
Yeah.
went for something called oh my gosh, I totally just blanked on it. But it's a pale pink little semi-precious stone. It's
Ooh.
very pretty. And then I did rose gold and everything, which I would still do as a
Mm-hmm.
symbol of our partnership. I still have it. It broke because rose gold is a little softer, so
Is it?
I would get it repaired and still wear it. Yeah, a little bit, but it's
Mm,
still pretty. So
that
I
sounds
would still
pretty.
wear it as a symbol, even without the legal marriage.
Yeah,
We'll
you
get into
definitely
that.
can. Oof. Yeah, this is going to be a great discussion. And I thought that this discussion, since you have so much to give in this discussion, and so I would love for you to dive in, and I will come along with you on the journey.
Okay. Yeah, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. Like you said, I'm very passionate about it because I've been on quite the roller coaster journey of, as a little girl, so many of us, like America really pushes the fantasy
Right,
of being the princess on your wedding day. And that's like the most important day of your life as a
right.
girl. And so I grew up with that fantasy, and my mother kind of fed into it because I've mentioned in our other discussion she's very Christian. And I
Mm-hmm.
was given a promise ring when I turned 13 by my mother,
Mm,
and a promise ring to stay um, a virgin until
right.
being married. And so, I'm 13 years old. I don't know anything about marriage, anything about love, especially not the physical side of it. And it's just starting from there, it's really kind of, what's the word? I want to say like dystopian. It's kind of insane
Yeah,
to me with that. Yeah,
it
like being
is.
removed from it now. It's like how is it normal and so normalized to talk to young girls and young boys too about being brides and grooms and being married, and from the Christian
Yeah.
aspect talk to them about not being intimate physically when like they're
There's
just
so
kids
much.
still.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And especially getting older, like that's a bit more extreme, 13. But getting along in the teen years, like
Yeah.
17, 18, seniors in high school, we are legally adults, but you and I know we talked about this. Like, your frontal lobe as a human is not fully developed until you're 25 years old.
Right.
But it's still so common and such um, society and the media pushes and influences so much for people of that age to start thinking about big life decisions, marriage being one of them, a big one of them.
Right.
And it's just crazy. Again, like dystopian is the word that comes to mind, how it's so normal to put that on people that don't even have a fully developed frontal lobe, which is responsible for logic and decision making and
Right.
regulating your emotions. Right. So at that age, you have the freedom of an adult without the reasoning skills and emotional control of a fully developed adult. So
Yeah. And that's
I'll get off
dangerous.
my soapbox on that one. I think so,
It's very
because
dangerous.
there's lots of examples of people of any age, but or people of any gender is what I meant, to be kind of pressured either through love or other pressures to get
Yeah.
married. And I know you shared something personal that I'd love for you to tell the audience about, if that's
Oh yeah,
something you
yeah.
want to.
No, like about this. So you want to know about just like growing up or like how marriage was, how
Well,
I learned about
I
marriage.
was remembering specifically a friend you mentioned to me. That's why I said if it's okay for you to mention that, because
Oh, got you. Yeah.
yeah.
So I have uh, well, technically family member, friend type of situation,
Gotcha.
but yeah, I know that she was married young, and her husband was older than her, probably t- maybe 10, 11, maybe 12 years her senior, and very much, not uncommon for that to occur. um, but, numerous kids in, they had the first kid and then the second kid, third kid, so then we're doing numerous kids in, and I'm 32 and she had just turned early like 30s. And so she was just kind of, we were having like some time out to be with each other and be young, fun. And
Hmm.
she just shared with me that it just wasn't what she expected, and that it was a lot. um and I could only imagine feeling almost like trapped inside of a situation that you were not prepared for, because
Mm.
you didn't have all of the information that came along with what is it to be a wife, what is it to be a mother, what is it to be a partner, what is it to be a confidant and a friend and a teacher, and like all of these roles in a, the running of a home. Those are skills that a lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't know how to run their own home, let alone running a home with a husband and children. So it's yeah, I guess it's weird, because it's like, if we think of classes back in the day like home ec or different things that they taught you how to basically step into that role as a wife a little bit earlier or a little bit sooner. We have these values that are a part of our culture, like get married and things like that, but the foundation for them is no longer there. So it's like, I guess it almost feels like ideological to aspire to marriage versus it
Yes.
being like a real lived practical experience, because most people haven't really experienced the marriage that they're pushing. Most people will never experience that type of, 1950s style wedding marriage.
No.
So Yeah, and then, like, when you said the frontal lobe and being young, like, the perfect example. Like, I know so many I've had family friends and different things like that who got married young, 19, 18, 20. I was even watching a show the other day where this lady was talking about, she was like, "Yeah, oh, I know what show it was. I was watching Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, and one I know. Guilty pleasure, okay? Love it.
Hey,
Um,
I don't judge.
it keeps me sane. It keeps me knowing what the people are talking about, okay? Keeps me
There you
word on the street, you know?
go.
Um,
Love it.
so so she was it was funny because she was like, "Oh yeah, me and my husband we got married young." And when she was around the other ladies, she would say things like, "Oh, I would love a tall, dark, and handsome man. Like, oh, I would just go out and just have fun." And the other ladies were like, "Oh, don't you have a husband?" She's like, "Well, I'm just kidding, you know." And the other ladies were like, "Well, but that's your husband. Like, it's not giving joke, it's giving you wish you could go out there because your husband is not tall, dark, and handsome, but you
Yeah.
want tall, dark, and handsome.
Yikes.
So if given the opportunity, you may do the things." She's like, "No, I love him, but we did get married young." And so you can see the struggle that she's having because she's like, "Okay, I do love him. I do want to honor this, but also I kind of want something different because I didn't get to play because
Yeah.
we got married young."
Yeah.
So now she's
That's a
figuring out who she is.
yeah, that's an incredible example that so many, like you already said, so many people go through like that wake up call or reality check where suddenly they're several years in, maybe several kids into this marriage, and then they kind of come to and take stock of everything and realize, oh, I never got to fully explore myself. I never fully got to explore really anything
Yeah.
because I made those commitments so early. Um, it was a perfect segue or connection to one of my points I wrote down for this, which is like the reality versus the fantasy. And when you
Yeah.
said it's giving ideology, that's the perfect way to say it. And I really think in America, yes, I really think in America, that's absolutely what it is. It's pushed as this ideology, fantasy,
Yeah.
like there's
Yeah.
so much pressure. It's hyped up so much as a social milestone. It shows that you're a real adult. You're married, you're settled down now.
Yeah.
Um, you know, all those things of like planting roots, and there's still, unfortunately, in this day and age, the stigma behind not getting married, especially towards
Yeah.
women. I mean,
Especially.
I think it's fair to say on both sides, but it's a little more accepted for a man to be not married. Like,
Right.
for the men, sometimes they get the criticism or rudeness of like comments about they're gonna pass alone and they're gonna be a old, lonely, angry old man.
Right.
But you don't see that quite as often. You see them called like silver foxes and silver bachelors and stuff.
Yeah.
But with women, right, but with women, we'll call them spinsters or say they're going to turn into a crazy cat lady or something like
That part.
that. Tell them that they hate men if they are straight or whatever. Like, it's way less accepted even now. And there's
That
just,
part.
I really loved when you said ideology. I think that's the perfect way to describe the way America views marriage is like this
Yeah.
pristine little, and then the wedding day, there's so much pressure on that
Yes.
we have, you mentioned reality TV, so another connection to things that points that you brought up. We have like at least one show I know of, the Bridezilla reality show.
Bridezilla for weddings. Yeah, for weddings. There's so
Yeah,
many wedding shows.
because um and like I think there's even one called Bridezilla's where it focuses
There
on
is. Yep.
the
Bridezilla's great
women,
show.
right? And that is a phenomenon that's specific to the US. Like there's
Yeah.
really no other place where brides act that way to the point that they have a nickname and it's kind of accepted and or encouraged. Like, oh well, it's her special day. It's
Yes.
her like the best day of her life.
Right.
Just
So
let
she can
her
be a
be a
psychopath.
terror.
Yes.
Exactly. Psycho.
Yes. No, we are not friends after this, just so you
No,
know.
no. But it's normalized. It's included in that ideology that, like, and for the other side, for the groom, the bride is allowed to act like a bridezilla, be a control freak about every little tiny thing, tell her
Yes.
bridesmaids to cut their hair a certain way or other ridiculous things.
Yeah.
And then the men, there's the stigma of, like, he's not going to be involved if it's a hetero
Yeah, he's
wedding.
not even
Yeah.
included in the wedding,
Yeah.
which is
He just
crazy.
does what he's told.
Yeah, and then the crazy
Yeah.
thing about that is then wherever you go, all the men like choose that role. They're like, "Yeah, I'm not really a
Yeah.
part of it. I'm not really doing anything." And then
I
it's
agree.
like it's like everybody's just kind of conforming to this role, to this ideological view of
Hmm.
marriage based on what other people have said it is or based on what they saw or so then it leaves no room for marriage to be a creation of your own.
I love that. That's how it should be. And
Yeah.
I agree with that. Most men in a hetero wedding, they choose that role
Yeah.
of being not involved and just, I'm going to take a side seat and just be present at the wedding. That's my role. But
Yeah.
I have seen a little bit, again, things are changing, not fast enough, but I have seen a little bit of men who want to be involved,
Mhm.
but
Oh,
then
yeah.
their their fiance stops them from being able to make their
Mm,
own decisions. Like, I wish I could
okay.
remember the username, but he's on YouTube here, the red flag guy and the green flag guy. If you've seen him on TikTok, he's also on YouTube. He'll
Hmm.
react to relationship videos, and he has these big giant red and green flags that he'll run through fields with. He's great.
Oh,
Anybody, like, you
wow.
should look him
Okay.
up. Yeah, and he's very honest, but adds comedy to it. But my
Okay.
point is, I saw a short he posted recently that was this exact situation I just brought up, where it's a bride and groom, and the or fiancés, and the woman was filming herself as like a POV. This is, you're planning your wedding. You're stressed out of your mind planning your wedding, and you have to have this conversation every night. And it's her and her husband, and he's talking about he doesn't want to wear a black tux because that's just so boring. He says, I want to be more unique and be more myself. And he wants to wear a green tux.
Mhm.
And she just shuts him down, like, no, you're not going to do that. No, you're going to wear a black tux.
Oh, Lord.
Green, like, that's just, I can't imagine that looking good. No, you're going to wear a black tux.
Oh
And
my
she
god.
posted it as like, oh, poor me. I'm so frustrated. I have to have the same
Mm.
argument with my fiance every night.
The
But it's
disrespect.
like, exactly, the disrespect. That is supposed to be your future life partner, and you can't even let him choose the color of his tux?
Operative word is partner. This is something that
Yes.
y'all are supposed to be doing together. And I feel like
Yes.
the wedding day is like the whole wedding preparation is a great time to see whether or not you guys are actually in partnership, if you guys are actually in collaboration with each other for the same goal. Like, that's wild.
I
That's
agree. And if you can't even collaborate on the wedding day, it doesn't bode well for the marriage.
right.
But you keep like opening the doors for me. It's beautiful. The flow is flowing today because that perfectly connects to my point on the theme of all these themes psychologically about the wedding and the roles that the husband and or fiancés play, and then when
Right.
they become husband and wife, these
Mm.
roles and these ideologies, I feel like they continue into marriage with most
Mm.
hetero marriages, because it's like you made the perfect point. The key word is
I do.
partner. And I've experienced and had this breakthrough and spoken honestly many times now about with my own husband, um, that it's like once the label of husband and wife is put on
Mm.
both partners, we stopped acting like
Talk about
partners
it.
and stopped treating each other like partners. We started
Yeah.
acting like husband and wife and started treating each other that way,
I'm about to
as
just
if
part
there
my
was
shit.
a level of disconnect,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
Like, it was really hard
Come
to
on
have
now.
that conversation.
Yeah.
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
No, I'm from the South, as you know. So I'm like, yes, amen. Yes.
Oh, yes, yes, good. I mean, it's very empowering. It's very like that's why I'm passionate about it because once we had that first hard conversation where both of us are tearing up and crying about it, then things started to shift and change for the better.
Mm, yeah,
And it's
I love that.
so like those ideas, that ideology and those roles, it reminded me of that Shakespeare quote, all the world's a stage and all the men and women
Mm,
merely players. It's like we
mm,
step into
very
the
true.
role
The role
of
of.
wife and husband, yes, and stop acting like we might stop acting like who we were in the beginning ourselves, and then we stop treating our partner the way we did in the beginning. Like I had to hold myself accountable that I stopped I chose to stop being as independent as I was when we were just dating or engaged.
Mm,
I stepped into the mindset of, no, you're my husband. You're supposed to do this, this, and this. And it wasn't
mm,
like, for me, it wasn't monetary things or physical things, but a lot of women take it there in hetero marriages. For me, it was emotional labor. I put so much on him to do emotional labor on
mm,
my behalf
mm.
for me, and not realizing that in the moment, I should have been doing the emotional labor I needed for myself. And
Oof.
then maybe he could meet me halfway or support me. But I needed to be taking responsibility for my own emotions
Yeah.
first.
Oof.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, you
And
you are preaching. Like, can I interject?
of course, I'm so sorry. Thank you for letting
No,
me be on my
no,
soapbox.
you're preaching because I have experience with this very same thing, except mine was with a woman.
Oh, wow.
And I was essentially, and I saw this take on TikTok and I completely agreed with it because, I love emotional intelligence. I love equality in a partnership. I want you to be fully you, let me be fully me, and we'll figure out how to meet in the middle as long as if we both can compromise and agree upon it, excellent. Let's work together, whatever it is. Let's just do it together. Um,
Yes.
and what the lady on TikTok was talking about, she's a bisexual woman, and the woman who I was dating was also a bisexual woman. And she said basically what happens when a bisexual woman dates another woman is she essentially becomes the man in the relationship. And she starts taking, because when she's with a man, she doesn't have to do a lot of emotional labor. She doesn't have to basically do, or she's doing it already. So and then but then she's not getting like a partnership, right? She's not getting like a back and forth. So she
Right.
doesn't have to grow emotionally. She doesn't have to grow spiritually. Like nobody's holding her accountable for her explosions or her lack thereof of giving emotion because the man is not holding her accountable for that. So when a bisexual woman enters a relationship with a woman, the woman is like, "Where's your emotional intelligence? We need to speak about everything. This is going to be a real partnership." And then the bisexual woman is like, she kind of turns into the
Hold
man.
up. I'm not used to this. Yeah.
Yeah, she turns to the man because she's like, uh,
Hmm.
that's no, what? And it was just so it was so interesting because when she said that, I completely connected with it because that's I was doing the emotional labor in the relationship. And I couldn't understand. I was like, "You're a woman. This should be easy. We should be able to easily talk to each other. We really shouldn't have any strife. It shouldn't feel like I'm speaking a different language to you. Like
Hmm.
this is supposed to be simple. This is not supposed to be difficult. What's happening?" But what was happening was I was dating someone that had dated men and then had very few women in a close intimate relationship. So to have that occur, it, it was like when we stepped into our roles, because I'm like, well, I've been mostly non-monogamous most of my life. It just kind of happened that way, and then I started understanding that maybe I'm just a little bit more monogamous because I just enjoy relationships themselves. I don't like to have a cap on how many relationships I can have. Like I want to have them when I have them. And so this relationship was really my first monogamous relationship. It was very much monogamous, and I
Mm,
said, you know what, I'll give it a try. I'll step into it. But my fear was, if I give you this title and then I have the title, I don't want you to start acting like my girlfriend. I just want you to be yourself. I'm gonna be myself. But then that started happening, and I was like, oh no. I was like,
hold up.
no, my freedom. Like it started to feel like that.
Damn.
Like my autonomy. Like it started to feel like an enmeshment. And I was like, that's why I didn't want to do this, because we're not partners who are in each other's lives. It's like we're trying to play these roles. And I
Mm,
don't I don't like that. Now it's like, oh well, I want flowers every day, and it's like I'm doing it because that's just what you want, versus, or that's what you feel like you should have because now you're in a relationship. But I'm like, but were we doing that before? That
right.
wasn't a natural part of our relationship. It
Wow.
became a part of the relationship because we have a title. And that's the roles where I was like, like I
What's
felt,
happening here? Yeah.
yeah, I was like, this is not. I enjoyed the relationship when it was free flowing, when we were just visiting each other, when we were just having fun and building that foundation, and when we were like flirty friends, and and things like that. But then when I feel like when the titles came and the labels came, it turned into this very boxy. This is what you do. This is what
Mm,
I do. And then I was like, this is not enough fluidity for me. Mm-mm. So, yeah, so when you were saying like the roles and like you're my husband now
yeah.
and I'm the wife now, I can relate to that dynamic. When I stepped into monogamy, it really felt restrictive. And I don't like things that feel
Wow.
restrictive, because it makes me feel like I'm not allowed to fully be me. And then it makes me say,
Mm,
well, why can't I fully be me inside of a relationship? Like why does me now have to change and suffer just to be inside of this thing? That then I'd rather not be inside of that thing. If I have to sacrifice
wow.
me to be
Yeah.
to say I'm someone's girlfriend or I'm someone's boyfriend, I have to literally kill me to fit into this. No, thank you. It's not for me then. That's fine.
And
No.
that's that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. And that's, again, you opened another door because uh, that's a part of the, marriage extending into relationships and the Americanized view of relationships, and monogamy included, and the stigma, the expectation and the stigma resulting from the
Yeah.
expectation to become one, like you said, like a meshing, a melding together. Like, you're no
Yeah.
longer two separate entities in an equal partnership, you are one entity. And of course, that's
Yeah.
just amplified if you're going to get married. But
Religious.
I feel
Yeah.
like you made a perfect point that that kind of pressure to be one entity is put on monogamous relationships by the American
Yeah.
society, which,
Yeah.
and that's so detrimental to what a healthy relationship should needs to be, whether it's monogamous or not, marriage or not.
Yeah.
Um, like, I think of the only good example I have of a successful marriage is um, my dad to my stepmom. They've been
Mm.
married. They've been together since I was like 6 or something, and
Wow.
married for, yeah, and married since I was like 9 or 10 or something. But the key thing that I see is that, unfortunately, my dad travels a lot for his job. So because of that, my stepmom has no choice but to
Mm.
maintain her individuality and do the hobbies and activities outside the house that she likes to do, hang out with her
Right.
friends, do
Right.
her knitting groups, right? Like, she's been involved in a lot of different gyms, stuff like that. But even when he's home, like, of course they spend time together, but she will still, like, if she had a knitting group scheduled and he's just home for a surprise visit, she will go still do that thing, and he'll either hang out at the house and do something for himself or go golf or
Right.
whatever, and then they connect back at the house whenever she's done with her little activity. And that's very rare. Like I said, it's the only good example I have of
Yeah, that
marriage.
is very rare.
And I tried very hard to put the good things I saw from my dad's example into my marriage. Um, but we never talked about the specifics of like the emotional dynamic and things like
Yeah,
that with marriage. But once I started opening up those conversations with him, um, he helped me see more clearly like my side of things, because
mm,
I started coming to him with the dialogue being very much about Charlie, my husband, and what he was doing wrong, or the quote unquote problems he was causing. And my dad is very real and honest, just like I am. So he'd be like, well, what about this from your side? And it sounds like you're expecting a little too much of him in that situation. Like, just really,
mm,
as gently as he could, being real with me about, in so many words, a
wow.
codependency, or a kind of like what I
Mm,
just talked about, the expectation of Charlie to do so much because he's my husband, when really he's a man. He's a human. We're both
yeah,
just humans.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, I love that your dad also was like, okay, and this.
And you
Because
did what now?
yeah, it's like, so how did we get here though? When I think,
Yeah.
when you talked about the emotional aspect, it's like, some people are born with high emotional intelligence and things like that. Other people have to learn it. And it's definitely a journey. It's something that happens over time, but it takes so much grace from both people. And I think both people have to be
Mhm.
willing to want to be in a partnership. But the very idea of a partnership is what is not talked about inside of marriage. Like when you said there's the merging of two become one, it's like,
Mhm.
but what does that really mean? What is that definite? How do two people become one? Does it mean we're thinking the same? Does it mean we're doing the same things? Like there's so many like loose ends to that that it's like, to me, I mean, I would say like my own definition is that like we have the same goal, we have the same mission. We blend into
Yes.
each other in a way that is like, if I'm good at cooking, you love washing the dishes. Like to me, I
Yeah.
feel like that's where the blending of two become one goes, because now we're like moving inside of each other's lives and inside of each other's worlds like this, like and
Yes.
mitigating arguments or fights, because it's like we're not trying to fight each other, we're trying to fight whatever the issue is, or whatever this thing that is keeping us
I
at a
love
distance
that.
from each other. We need to be like, now what is that? Like we need to see those things as threats to our harmony, our flow, our peace. But it's like when you're going into a marriage, you're going into a relationship, you, these are things that you're blindsided by. You're not, no, most people have not experienced a healthy relationship, whether it's romantic or platonic. So it's like now you're like, go get married, throw some kids in
Oof.
there. Girl, are you crazy?
Fire.
What?
Oh my god, right? It is crazy. It is
You
like
hate
accepted societal insanity. Like, I love the
Yes,
way you
it's
said that, and throw some
chaos.
kids in there. Yes.
Right. Throw some kids in there. Throw some 80 hours a week in there. Are you crazy?
Oh my god, yeah. That's I love yeah, I love the way that you said that about
That's
the
right.
synergy. And what I really think
Yeah.
you were describing was how any partnership should be, whatever you label your relationship. That's even in a friendship or family relationships, like two sides of the same coin for, a committed
Right.
relationship. Like, we are still separate entities. The two sides of a coin look completely different, but
Completely.
they're part of the same unit, united
Yes.
against, like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
said, the
Different.
same, united against the same issues or towards the same goals. But at the end of the day, we are still individuals, not not
That
one
part.
unit, right? That has to do every single little thing together.
That part. And I think like what you said
Yes.
about your stepmom and how she still has her own things going on. And even when he
Yes.
comes back, she's like, okay, we'll go out tonight, but I gotta go be with my girls during the daytime. Like she
Yeah.
hasn't lost the fact that she is her own person. Like I like it's I like to say being having self possession, being self possessed. Like
Ooh, like
I
that.
own me, what I'm trying to do,
Mm,
my role. I'm in charge of that. And when I realize that that means I get to take responsibility for everything that occurs with me. And then in a relationship, I'm sharing that. I'm sharing me with you and you're sharing me with you, back and forth.
yeah.
So it's like it's in that's our mutual interest is we're sharing ourselves with each other, so
Yes.
it I yeah, like yeah, because because then that codependence happens, that enmeshment happens,
Hmm.
and oof, like that's I don't know, man, that sounds
I think
terrifying.
that opens up. It really is. It can be terrifying, especially like the example we keep coming back to when you have kids in the mix. And then that's the
Yeah,
feeling of being trapped where that comes in because, people want to stay together for the kids, but
yeah,
we all know like I come from divorced parents, and if my biological mom and dad had stayed together, I cannot even think of living in that horror show as a
yeah.
kid because they
Whew.
fought enough being divorced when I was a
Whew.
kid. Like sometimes it's not
Mhm.
better. You're not really helping the kids by staying together.
Yeah, most times
Um,
you aren't.
no, and the door that you just opened up for me once again with your lovely flow
Yeah,
was when you mentioned, I can't remember how you phrased it, something about giving up your identity, and that when that codependency and meshing
yeah,
happens, you
yeah.
start losing your identity
You do.
bit by bit.
Little
And
bit.
that,
Oof.
yes, bit by bit. And that reminded me of my point here about women specifically in hetero marriages and the expectation to give up their last name to take their husband's last name. And that's something that, again, it's just so normalized. But
Come
that is a
on.
part of my identity as a woman is my last name, and that's my
Yeah.
father's last name, and something. But it's I give a couple small examples of my stepmom first, and then myself. My stepmom, when she married my dad, did not take his name. She kept her last name because she
Mm.
has an older sister who had already been married and taken her husband's name. And she just wanted to keep her family's last name alive because she was the last member
Mm.
of her family besides her parents. Yeah. So, and the thing is, when I was a naive, brainwashed by society's pressures of the bride fantasy and marriage fantasy, I thought that was weird. And I would, um, teenage me, my dad and my stepmom would have their little kiki little jokes about her last name not being his, but he accepted it. It was just a cutesy little, but I would add on to it and genuinely like I'd be trying to kiki and make jokes about it, but looking back, it was probably a little disrespectful, and I didn't see that because I was a little dumb teenager, but I thought it was genuinely weird. Like, why don't you want to take his last name? Like, da, da, da. Like, that's how you're supposed
Yeah.
to do it, stepmom. And
Yeah.
so my perspective on that has totally changed. And she eventually ended up hyphenating it to have her last name hyphen and then his last
Mm.
name.
It is. Okay.
Um, and it just, again, like, my perspective has changed down the road because my second little example of that is my husband and I got engaged the fall of 2019, and we set our wedding date for February 20th or 22nd, sorry, of 2020.
Mm. Okay.
So, you're right, that year probably rings a bell. Like literally a week, maybe a week and a half later was when the shutdown happened. The mandatory like COVID quarantine And so
Wow.
we got very lucky to be able to have our wedding before that happened. But then I had planned to take his last name. But then because the shutdown happened and then everything was thrown off with like the DMV and other government offices being so backed up
Right.
or not even open, some of them, like it
Right.
just didn't happen that year. And then the next year it was like, okay, well, I'll try to get to it when I can, and just life kept getting in the way.
Mm,
And then by our third wedding anniversary, I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to change it.
yeah.
Um, because life is imperfect. You fall in love with who you fall in love with. And my husband's been married twice before me. He's,
Oh, okay.
yeah, he's 12 years older than me. And, you know, like it's our cutesy little love story. I tried to not fall in love with him, but my heart had other ideas.
Yeah.
And because that's little aside, that's a part of the ideology of marriage and dating and finding a partner
Mm,
is like this list of things. Oh, he's been married before. Oh, he's been married twice before. Oh, he has kids by both of those other women. Like, oh, he's going to school right now trying to make a career change. These were all reasons that at the time I thought were valid reasons to not want to be around this man and date him. But I couldn't ignore
mm,
how my heart felt and how comfortable and safe I felt when I was with him.
right.
So my little mushy gushy add in there. But, you know, I talked to him about not changing my last name and having the honest conversation with him about, you know, I know that it's me and you for the rest of our lives, ride or die, however things work out. Like, you're never getting rid of me and vice versa.
Right.
But I don't want to be the third Mrs. Miller. If we're different and we're special and we're going to last, I don't want to, and I don't want to take that last name, and I don't think that I have to. And then of course he beautifully agreed and was like, you know, I love you for who you are, and it doesn't matter to me if you take my last name. And he actually, more than just it doesn't bother me, he agreed that he would rather me keep it, especially because
Mm,
of the way I felt about it. So right, like it's
yeah.
um, those are just my little personal examples. And so, because of going through those different things, I really feel like that should be way more normalized for, you know, if you want to get married, I feel like it's not always necessary, but if you want to, as a hetero
Yeah.
couple, it should be more normalized for women to keep their last names or hyphenate or
Yeah.
something, you know, like
Definitely
that's a
high.
part of her identity.
And
Yeah.
I like what you said about because that's an interesting take about removing her last name is about erasing her history, her family's identity, and making it as though she's the second class citizen and the man is in charge and he is the only one that gets to carry
Wow.
on the name and carry on the
Yeah.
legacy while she has to give up her name and give up her legacy. And it's like, well, we should be building a shared legacy
Hmm.
together. We should be uniting our houses, you know? Um,
Right.
so eh, like that looks like okay, compromise. You we both have a hyphen. Your last name is hyphened, my last name is
Mhm.
hyphened. You know, we're a partnership. Like, you know, nowhere in partnership does it include erasure.
I
Um,
love that.
that's weird.
The the hyphen and the partnership and building a legacy. I love the way you just said that. And that I never thought of, like, also the husband hyphenating, but I love that even more.
Yeah,
Like,
but how cute would that be?
it's super cute. I love it. Like,
You know?
because my husband and I have even talked about him changing his last name to mine, and we kind of moved on from that. But the idea of us hyphenating and sharing that hyphenated last name, that's adorable.
Yeah,
And
because
like you
it's
said,
like
building that legacy.
that's what it is. Bringing two like I'm a really big like Game of Thrones person. I love like old world
Yes,
government.
me
Like I
too.
you know, I love the royalty aesthetic. And I'm really big on like, okay, if we get married, we are uniting these great houses and we're coming together to build
Yes.
this empire. So like why, like, both of our house names need to be strong because they're coming together. Like, it's not
Right.
erasing the other, it's like these two strong opponents, houses coming together. So that's what
I
I would
love that.
think a partnership would would be. Just like when you see businesses collaborate, like if Target and Walmart were to partner together, it wouldn't be like Target and then Walmart somewhere in there, but it's really about Target. No, it'd be two entities that come together. Target would have their sign, Walmart would have their sign. They're both equally big coming together to make something even bigger.
Yes,
Like that's what a collaboration is. Like even like what we're doing. Like I feel
exactly.
like it's the same idea. It's like nobody's being erased. You're still being Alex the artisan. I'm still being Ianthe the Onyx archive. We're collaborating, but nobody's getting erased or lost within the collaboration.
Exactly. Oh man, I love the way you said that, fire, because the erasure like is a huge part of that ideology in America for marriage. And it's really, it's going back to the reality check of it all. That's why our divorce
Mm,
rates are so high. People talk about
yeah.
the good
Come
old
on.
days and marriages lasting, but they lasted because women didn't have the freedoms. Like, I saw this, I'm going to try to not get on my soapbox, but somebody posted an incredible reel to Instagram about women's rights that
Mm,
are younger than some of our mothers.
wow.
And no lie, in the US, it was 74, 75, and my mom was born in 74, both my parents, was the year that women were able to get credit in their own name. And I think also work
Wild.
without their husband's permission or something like that. Yeah, it
Mm,
really wild. But
yeah.
the credit card one for sure I do remember was like 74 or 75. Up until that point, a woman could
Uh,
not get a credit card without a male family member or her husband to co-sign for her. Even
that's
if she
wild.
worked, even if she had her own income, right? It's insane. And to kind of briefly connect to current events with the name change, they're now trying to pass a bill that would, or maybe it already passed. I didn't fact check myself. Um, but a bill that would make it impossible for women to vote who have taken their husband's last name, because they're putting a restriction on voting registration to where you need to have your birth certificate and a passport to register to vote. And if it doesn't match, like, I'm wording it very terribly, but I've seen it all over and posted a few things for International Women's Day. Like, it would basically make most women in America ineligible to vote because their last name on their driver's license would not match the last name on their birth certificate. Same thing with like their passport, their driver's license. It's going to be the husband's last name that they've taken when they got married. It's different than their birth certificate.
That's wild.
Yeah, I remember being blown away because, like with so many other things happening for women's rights, we're going backwards in time, or people are trying to make us go backwards in time. And I just remember thinking another good reason that I didn't change my last name to my husband's. Because
Yeah.
now, hopefully, if this has passed or is going to pass, I can get out there and vote and try to help do something about it because I now still have that privilege. Like, it's insane.
Yeah. I
I'm
mean,
going to get off the soapbox now.
it's no, I mean, you brought up like a really good truth to marinate on or to chew on because a name is directly tied to your identity. So it's basically these laws are saying, well, you have your husband's last name, so you don't exist. Pretty much, you're not a whole person. So a whole person cannot vote. So even more of a reason why marriage and the institution of it and the system of it, I feel like you need to go into it really just educated because again, earlier, my coworkers and I, we were talking about that because one of my coworkers was saying that her dad and stepmom were not married either. They weren't married. They decided to not get married. And when they did eventually decide to get married, the stepmom was like, well, we could have just stayed together because the tax breaks aren't really even that big of a deal for us to even be
Yeah.
married. And so they're just learning that inside of being married. So it's like,
Wow.
it's like all of these things, and people are thinking like, oh, well, when we have to do, property or wills, it'll just be easier for us to be married. But really, you can just go to an estate planner if
Yeah.
you want to divvy up things. You don't like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like there's so much,
Right.
there's miseducation, and then there's literally just ignorance
Yeah.
surrounding marriage, because like we said and agreed upon earlier, it's because it's based in ideology, it's not based in facts. So nobody really understands how to move within marriage, because you're not moving in fact, you're moving in fantasy. And
Yes.
you can't
Mm,
live in fantasy and think reality's also going to make sense. It's like, no,
right.
you need to live in reality, and you can aspire to the fantasy, but it has to always be attached to reality in order for it to be real. So it's
Yes.
like
Oh man.
there's no, yeah, like people are they're wrapped up in the idea of love, the idea of marriage, the idea of this partner. And I've been in my relationships, especially my past one, I was an idea. I was a good idea.
Mm,
However, me being a good idea means you miss me completely, and you miss how this is going to work, because we're not living in reality, we're living in fantasy. So it's like when we start idealizing marriage, and when we start idealizing a partnership, and just all of these idea, there's no fantasy. It's like, well, you know, what is your life plan? What is your mission? What is your goal? Why do we make sense to be in each other's lives? Do, are you an early riser? Do you like to sleep in? Are you loud? Do you snore? Because that's not going to work for me. Like things like this.
yes.
Like,
Yeah.
give me the truth. I need to figure out who you are, and you need to figure out who I am to see if this makes sense. But like, it's like,
Right.
no, because the fantasy feels better, but then the reality of the fantasy is pure hell. And then you just enjoy living in pure, no, you don't enjoy living in pure hell. You just stay in hell, and then you add
Right.
children. I'm going to keep coming back to the children thing because it keeps happening. And then you add
Yeah.
children to hell, and then
Yeah.
we tell our children, hey, grow up, get married, and experience hell.
Do the same thing. Yeah. Experience hell for yourself. Right. And then we wonder why divorce rates are sky high and things like that.
Yes.
Like it's all a delusion. It's all so many illusions. And then when you're stuck in the hell, as you said it, or you choose to stay stuck in the hell because it's
Yes.
familiar.
Because
So
it's a
in that
familiar hell.
familiarity, yeah, you're familiar with hell. And so on a certain level, you have to delude yourself into thinking that the hell you're in is comfortable than the discomfort that change brings about. But change
Yes.
doesn't happen in a comfort zone, and some
It
people,
doesn't
so
jump.
many people become like what's the word, become like attached to the struggle,
Yeah.
to the hell of being in a bad relationship. Like
Yes.
I have
Because
a
that's what they
family
tell
member.
you.
Yes, that's what they tell you to do, like to stick it out or to try and like blah 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 blah, blah. But sometimes it's better to just walk away. It's better to just get like a couple, again, and a couple small personal examples of this. I have a family member
Yeah.
who was in a relationship with someone and had an unexpected pregnancy happen, and they tried to make it work for a little while but could not because he is just, she's a very difficult person and he is kind of an a-hole. But for years now, my cousin is now 11, and for years, most of his life, they've lived together even though they are not romantically involved.
Wow.
For, as my family member says, to like bring together the incomes to make it easier to afford things. But the reality
Convenience.
is,
Convenience.
right,
Your
but that's the
relationship.
delusion. Right, that's the delusion, because the reality is, my family member, she's in hell. She hates being around that guy. She hates sharing a house with him. He is insufferable, and
Ugh,
I know that he gets annoyed by her too.
right.
But she chooses to stay in that hell, continuing with our metaphor, because it's familiar. So she's gotten comfortable with it.
Mm.
And on a certain subconscious level, a lot of people, she has come, like a lot of people, sorry, she has come to enjoy the drama. Some people don't know how to
Mm.
live without having something to complain about, without having something to bring that drama into their lives.
Yeah.
Another example of
Preach.
this, my little small thank you, I'm going to keep it short, but to continue with the preaching, another small example I've seen of this is someone that used to be a very close friend of mine, and she was got in a relationship and married someone who had 2 kids from his previous marriage. And the thing is, she knew and saw things in his behavior that showed he was not an ideal partner before she even chose
Mm.
to marry him. But she went through with it anyway because of all the points we've been discussing, the delusion, the selling, and the ideology of marriage, and yada
Right.
yada. And also specifically the delusion of, we haven't quite touched on, thinking that he will shape up once he's my husband.
Oh.
Like,
Mm.
she might not have ever said those words, but that's the vibe, that's
That's what
the
she was
idea.
thinking. The change.
But he already showed that he wouldn't do that with his ex-wife. Why do you think it's different now? Like, anyway, I digress. She still goes through with the marriage, and come to find out, was maybe 2 or 3 months pregnant at the time that the wedding actually happened, and didn't realize it.
Damn.
So she not only goes through with marrying a man that she knows has major emotional intelligence and mental health issues, but then she's having, intimacy unprotected to where she creates an unexpected pregnancy. And this is going to be a hot take, but if you choose to marry and then make children with a man that you know had these problems, you're not you're not thinking of your kids before you even have them. So
Mm.
then
Come on
deluding
now.
yourself and
Come
trying
on
to
now.
say that you're staying in the marriage because of the kids, like, no,
Mm.
no, honey, it's for you. You like the
Delulu.
drama, you
Yep.
like having something to complain about, you like having someone to blame for when things go wrong or get stressful. Like, and so to this day, she has divorced him, but he causes daily stress in her life still,
Oof. My
because they
God.
have shared custody. Yeah, so
Oof.
it's a
It's
thing
not.
where it's split custody. They will have them for 3 days on, 4 days off, 4 days on, 3 days off, that type of thing. And so on a daily basis, he is causing her stress. And when we were still friends, my advice was always the same: to get legal help involved. And she eventually did that. But then when his unacceptable behavior still continued, my advice then shifted to take him back to court and get primary custody,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
make that custody agreement enforce a third party messaging app, because she tried to implement that, but he's a control freak and a narcissist, I think. And like, you have to have the court step in and fix this for you, or it's just going to
Yeah.
keep repeating. But
That's
she
it.
chose to let it keep repeating. She hindsight being 2020, I see the reality of who she is, and she's one of those types of people that she's become comfortable with the hell that she
Yeah.
created for herself. She
Enjoy it.
loves being able to have this fight with him. It's like a battle to feel superior to him. It's a game, it's a mind game. Like, the
Mm-hmm.
way that she would talk about messaging him was always about, like, but I'm going to say this, and I'm not going to play into when he said that. I'm going to do this, and, like,
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
going to, it was
game.
all. And if it was really about her
Hmm.
kid that she dreamed about before she had, that she,
Hmm.
claims that she's keeping his father around for him, If it really was about the kid, she would have already taken her ex to court and gotten full custody, because
Yes.
the reality is, as much stress as her ex causes in her life, it is doubled for their son. It's already like, I'll get off my soapbox, but it's really eye opening to see how many people, especially women, love to keep men around that they can bitch about.
Yes. Like and then when you said it's the addiction to drama, it's the addiction to
Yes.
validation. It's like,
Mhm.
you only know how to operate in chaos. And so what feels normal and
Yeah.
comfortable for you is chaos. So you're going to keep chaos around because without chaos, you're like, well, where am I going to get my attention, or where am I going to get the validation that I'm here if I don't have
Mhm.
that? And then yeah, like you said, it's not about the child anymore. You're not even thinking about how your behavior is going to affect this child, and that's not operating from a place of love, marriage, or partnership. That's operating from a place of lack and not having, and control and manipulation. So it's like you're teaching your child how to be controlling, how to be manipulative, how to be emotionally avoidant. Like you're teaching them
Yes.
how to just be a little narcissist pretty much. And you're
That's
saying,
exactly the things that
yeah,
she's already seeing in his behavior. Like, he's, almost kindergarten age now, and all the things you just said, like, he was already displaying in daycare, interacting with other kids.
yeah, because he's you they're teaching him the foundation of how to
Yeah.
handle conflict, how to communicate, how to do all of these things. So he's like, well, you're my parents, you must know best. And then he's just displaying
Mhm.
that attitude. And then when he gets in trouble, then the parents have the nerve to come home and discipline him.
Ooh,
Girl,
ooh. You know what? You
I
just
learned
opened
how to be a
another
liar from
door.
you.
Yes,
All
you
right,
just
stop
opened
it.
another door
Stop it.
to a
Stop it.
quote that has lived in my head rent free ever since I
Ooh.
heard it. And it was
Ooh.
that, from a therapy and psychology standpoint, parents cannot instill behavior in their child that they themselves do not practice. And where it was presented to me was in I think a TikTok video about daughters healing from narcissistic mothers,
Ooh,
which is
that's
my
a topic.
situation, and specifically about the way the mom carries herself in a relationship. So we're talking about marriage, the way that, both examples of ex-friend and family member, the way that their sons see them be treated by men is how they're going to go
Mhm.
treat women or partners that they have when they grow up. And if they
Ooh,
had a
yes.
daughter, their daughter would grow up to let themselves be treated the way they saw their mom be treated, no matter how many times mom could say it till she's blue in the face every single day to her daughter: be with a man who respects you, be with a man who keeps your
Mm.
independent, yada yada yada. But if she's saying that but behaving a different way, parents cannot instill within their kids behaviors they themselves do not practice.
Yeah. No, and I know, with you saying that, I saw a tweet and the tweet said, I don't understand why there are so many men that were raised by single women who end up hating or not liking women. I don't get that. What is that about? And I said, well,
Wow.
here's what that's about.
That's
The
exactly,
mother
yeah.
probably did not like women. The mother probably had zero respect, zero admiration for women herself. She probably didn't
Ooh.
have many close women relationships where it was nourishing
Mm-hmm.
and it was inviting and it was giving what it needed to give. She probably was not a girl's girl, and she probably didn't even like nor love herself. So then her
Yes.
son is watching this. Her son is witnessing this. He's probably overheard her say, "That girl thinks she's this, thinks she's that." So then he
Mm-hmm.
gets
Oh my
older
God,
and he
yes.
starts treating women like crap. Well, he had a mother that showed him how to treat women.
Especially if he saw his mother being treated disrespectfully by men that she dated, or if it was a stepdad
Yeah,
situation.
and she
Like,
didn't do
that just
anything.
adds on to what you said.
Yeah, she
Exactly.
didn't
He's
reinforce
hearing
anything.
her not like women and not respect
Yes.
women or herself, and then see the way that she lets herself be treated. Oh my God, yeah. And that
Yeah, so
just,
why would he treat women any differently other than what he's used to being, what he's used to seeing? Like that, it makes perfect
exactly.
sense why they don't like women because they've been around women that didn't like other women and didn't like themselves. Like that's an easy one. It's not mind
And I,
boggling.
no, it's not. But we've mentioned this before, sitting with uncomfortable feelings. And that is a huge problem, I think, in society in
Yeah,
general. But it seems like it's huge in America, where we don't want to think about it, look at it, let alone sit with it and process uncomfortable ideas or feelings. And
yeah,
this is
yeah.
definitely one of them.
We want to fast forward them. We
Yeah.
want to cut to the next thing, but it's like no, like you that's how you learn emotional intelligence. That's how you heal from things is when you sit there and be like this feels like crap. I hate every
Yes.
second of this. But I'm going to just sit here and I'm going to let
But
this
the
pain
idea of,
pass.
exactly, let the pain pass. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
But
you're
the
good.
idea, sitting with the idea that misogynist men are created a lot of times by women is something
Women.
people don't want to sit and think about. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's a heavy one for sure. But, when you hear so many women be like, I raised my son better, like, did you really? How did he
Did
see
you?
you be treated? How did he see you
Right.
talk about other women?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and when you, I don't know, something you had said opened the door. So my segue isn't as graceful because I almost got off on another tangent. But
Mhm.
coming back to getting to know yourself and
That's it.
spending enough time with yourself to be
That's
able to
it.
see the flaws in yourself as well as
That's
knowing
it.
who you are. Because if there wasn't the societal pressure of getting in a relationship as quickly as you can, and then turning that relationship to a marriage as quickly as you can, and then adding quick kids to it as quickly as you can, there would be more respect and like a space to honor self-discovery for the good and the not so good parts of ourselves, and therefore self-healing
Yeah.
for our psyches before we invite another human to share our lives. Because that's
Yeah.
really,
That's
if
the
you don't get to know
foundation.
yourself, exactly, if you don't get to know yourself before putting on the label of husband or wife, or even just partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, it's so much easier to fall into the other things we discussed of losing yourself willingly or by the other person's influence, giving up parts of your identity, and suddenly you're no longer two strong individuals. You are one mess of
Yeah.
codependency and
That's it.
not honoring yourself. Yeah. So I
That's
think
it. Yeah.
it should be more. I hope to see this shift get even stronger, especially with the things going on in politics lately for women. I hope
Right.
to see the shift towards getting married later or just not getting married at all to gain more momentum and support, because if that is something you want for yourself, to have a lifelong partnership or a marriage, you have to be strong in your identity and your knowledge of
Right.
your strengths and your weaknesses, things you need to heal from your past. Like,
Right.
that's the only way things are going to get better. And I love that you brought up monogamy earlier on. And I just remembered, like, I wanted to add on to
Oh
something
yeah.
you
Go
mentioned
ahead.
about that. Like, it is, like, I already mentioned the stigma around monogamy and everything. And I feel like it comes from the pressures put on it, because even without the labels of husband and wife, it's like the label of monogamy still holds all of that. But I think it's getting a little bit better because of, therapy. And again, like I said, the social movement of just, I need to love myself before I can love anyone else, like
Mm.
RuPaul and,
I was just
and
gonna
other
say, like
people that say
RuPaul
that.
said.
Yes, I love Mama Ru. So it's getting much better, but I'd love to see it increase even more. And as a part of that increase, there's already been a revival, but I'd love to see it gain even more fire and momentum,
Mhm.
that other alternative types of relationships becoming more common and more accepted to the point to where they're no longer alternative, like
Right.
ethical non-monogamy or
Yeah. Love it.
polyamory, things like that. Like for my husband and myself, you know, I mentioned the conversations we had about how he and I both started acting differently, treating each other differently almost immediately after getting married.
Yeah.
And we've had many, many conversations about that. And for a while, had a rough patch where we thought maybe we weren't going to always be together.
Mhm.
But now we've come to a place where we're going to shift our relationship back to how it was before we were married and adopt one of those what's considered right now more unconventional relationships where we're like going to be legally ending the marriage, but we will still be staying together as life partners
Nice.
and
Nice.
be more of a cohabitation partnership. Um,
Nice.
excuse me. Because even though things have already changed for the better in so many ways, we're still building on it and we still want to honor, um, just honor the realizations that we've had and honor what we both need to heal
Right.
what we injured by buying into the ideology of marriage, because he comes from an extremely religious family. So that's why he's been married twice before. He was indoctrinated with like
Right.
marriage,
Bought
marriage,
in.
marriage. Yes.
Yeah.
His first marriage, he was 18, and then they had their first kid when he was 19. And then the second wife, like, I don't think they were even dating for a year before then they were married, and then
Right.
she's pregnant. Like, and it was a subconscious drive that he had in his behavior because of how he was raised.
Right.
So even though some, you know, we even considered like, well, if we're having this realization and it's causing us to change for the better, do we really need to end the
Mm.
marriage legally to continue that? And, you know, having those discussions, we came to the conclusion like, yes, because we need to honor our core selves, who we really are. You
Yeah.
know, him, Charlie, he pushed for marriage those two previous times and with me because it's what he was conditioned to believe was right by
Right.
not just
Versus.
society but his religious family, right? And for myself, when I met him, I had solidified the belief that I wasn't ever going to get married and had decided, like, if someone wants to be with me for the rest of our lives, I don't need a piece of paper. They don't need a piece of paper from me. They're just going to do it. And when we were first dating, that was the energy we had in our relationship, was like he told me he was my ride or die. He was always going to be there, and I didn't
Right.
have to marry him for him to do that. So for both sides, you know, I'll end my little soapbox, but it's been very transformative for both of us, and you know, like I said, very healing. So we will be. It's kind of, some people probably think it's freaking weird, but we're going to be legally ending the marriage and going back to honoring ourselves and
There you go.
being individuals that are a strong partnership, not a mess of melding and codependency.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And thanks for like sharing all the intricacies of your relationship and how it started, how you guys transformed, and then the new journey that you all are going on in the first part, so that it just allows you to, like you said, for me to just give us a nice little closing foundation. Um,
Yeah, for
Embracing who
sure.
you actually are, embracing your actual identity and what you actually want, be prior to partnering with anybody or anyone. It's like
Yes.
going to apply for a job with zero experience. The employer is going to be like, no.
Yeah.
No, because you don't have any experience in this job, so I'm not gonna hire
Yeah.
you to screw up my office. So
I love
marriage
that.
and partnership is the same thing. You don't have the
Yes.
experience, get get your ass back out there in the dating pool and go get the experience before you come over here. Okay.
And get some experience with yourself,
Yes, and
importantly, right? Like,
yes, because dating is, to me, dating is self-discovery. You're dating to figure out you more and figure out how you
yeah,
engage with a partnership. Like, to me, dating is like
yeah,
pre-partnership. You're
yes,
figuring out your boundaries. You're
agreed.
figuring out what's okay. You're figuring out what you want and what you don't want, which is why, like, that can be a whole nother episode, but about how, dating should be something that is encouraged versus it being like no dating straight to marriage. No, you don't have
Mhm.
the range to be in a marriage, babe. You haven't even dated
No.
anyone. You haven't been in the range. You don't have the range. So yeah. So all in all, get to know yourself first. Don't
Yes,
figure out you first before you destroy somebody else's life.
absolutely. Well said. Because even with just one little tiny addition, my husband and I were together for 4 years before we got married. But I would say another piece of advice to add on to that is to watch what your expectations are if you decide to take the relationship into marriage, and be on the lookout for if you start behaving differently in the relationship and treating your now spouse differently. And try to avoid that if when possible, and when you recognize it, address it right away. Like, they are still an individual. They are still the person you fell in love with. You have to keep treating them as such, or it's
Yeah,
all going to fall apart.
that's it. That's it. Clap, clap.
That's
Love it.
it. Clap, clap. So I see it is time for us to wrap. I think this was another beautiful
An
discussion. So we
amazing
will go ahead.
discussion.
Yes,
Probably one of my favorites now to date. Yeah.
I think so. It was
Yeah.
very. Thank you for letting me be on my
Very.
soapbox several times, because like you said, I'm very passionate, and I've got a lot of life experience in this for myself and the
Yeah.
outside looking in
Well,
on other people's lives.
it seems like we'll just have to have a part two of marriage and maybe break it down and talk about it in different like subtopics because I feel like people really love and enjoy and
That would be
connect
a
with
cool
it.
idea.
So I think we could just break down in a subtopic. So stay tuned.
Yes.
Maybe in the
Yes.
comments add what you want to talk about when it comes to marriage, dating, relationships, romance, all of that stuff. We're here for it. You know.
Love it. Yes, please. So that concludes today's live discussion. Thank you, everyone who's going to watch this later on. Thank
Yes.
you to Ianthe for having me here at the Onyx Archive. I hope for our viewers that this discussion challenged your ideas and expanded your perspectives, because remember, knowledge is power. And also, if you're interested in a place where intellect meets a creative lifestyle, please check out my main channel, Alexandria the Artisan. And remember that Alex the Academic is my space for all things intellectual and learning centered. Thank you again, Ianthe. I'm excited for whatever we decide to do next. Cannot wait for next week's episode.
Me too. I'm excited. I feel like we should just expand on the marriage thing. I don't know. It's giving what it needs to give.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
on
so.
board. I think it's fun. I think we have a lot to talk about. There's so much to discuss. Like I feel like we hit on different topics even in this moment of some of the things that we can discuss. So yeah. So until next time, remember to walk, speak your truth, stand in your truth, be the truth. Okay, and let it set you free, y'all. Let it set you free.
Yes.
You know, that's all I got for you tonight. You know,
Beautiful. Good night, everybody.
good night.